We also wanted to talk today about a cycle from Onslaught. This is the chain cycle. So the chain cycle, I think it was a set of cards that they designed that were inspired by Chain Lightning, which I'm sure everybody knows Chain Lightning from my favorite set of all time, Legends, originally. It's a lightning bolt. You do 3 damage for 1 red, but each time Chain Lightning does damage, the target or target's controller may then pay 2 red to copy Chain Lightning, have it do 3 damage to any target of that player's choice. When I was a kid, I was like, why would anybody want to play this card if they could just damage you with it?
I feel so dumb for thinking that.
I know.
I thought it was so inferior, like, to regular lightning bolt.
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me that maybe after your 4th lightning bolt, now you want
exactly
2 or 4 chain lightnings too.
Yeah, like you could play 4 lightning bolts and Chain Lightning. Yeah. Mind-boggling that somebody would have ever thought about that, but we didn't think about that.
Plus, I'm glad they have to double the cost of it to use it against you.
Exactly.
Plus, they have to have 2 red mana.
So it's you're still doing more efficient damage.
Yeah, right.
More resource efficient damage.
And you have the choice of when to play it. So if like you're really worried about your Hypnotic Spectre being killed, like you don't have to use it.
Don't have to use it against anybody who's not playing red.
Yeah, it's fine.
They won't have the 2 red mana.
It's just like getting a free pass to have 8 lightning bolts in your deck. What the fuck?
Yeah, so when we were 12 years old, we didn't think about this card. But I did buy 4 of these, actually. So it was when we first started buying again. I bought Chain Lightnings right away. I was like, fuck yeah, Chain Lightning,
I got
baby.
2 lightly played Chain Lightnings that look crispy.
That's good.
Happy.
That's sweet. It's been reprinted a lot, too. So yeah, I'm sure everybody knows about it.
Oh, wow.
Just reprinted and Dominaria Remastered. I don't think people are going to get tired of Chain Lightning, and I think they're always going to want the Legends one, and it's still in a nice little sweet spot where, you know, it's not cheap, but it's definitely affordable for people to pick up if it stays around this price. I don't think it's going to go below this price ever. That's one of the old chain cards. Another old chain card. So I'm talking about the 2 chain cards that existed back in the day when we first played. The second one.
Cycle chain cards.
The second one that influenced this cycle from Onslaught, Chain Stasis, which I only had a vague memory of. But then when I pulled the card up and read it again, I was like, oh, I totally do remember this card. And I think it looks pretty good. And I also have a memory of it like being a thing back in the day when Homelands first came out. Like
there was definitely like a deck.
Yeah, I think so too. I can't remember what that deck was. But I do think it was one of the cards that like people tried to break back when Homelands first came out. One of the cards that people actually played when Homelands first came out. And it's cheap right now if you do want to pick one up. I actually, when I reminded myself of these cards I put 4 in my TCG player cart, haven't bought them yet, but I was like, hey, why not?
Look and see if I have any of these.
I probably threw some out many years ago. I probably had them, and now they're in the trash. Chain Stasis is an uncommon from Homelands. It's 1 blue, instant, tap or untap target creature. So there you go. It's a twiddle. No, but just for creatures.
Just for creatures.
It's a limited twiddle.
Yeah.
That's my revision. Whenever any player uses Chain Stasis to tap or untap a creature, that creature's controller may pay 2 colorless, 1 blue to use Chain Stasis to tap or untap any target creature. So basically, you just chain together the tap or untap effect against as many of your opponent's creatures as you can pay for, or as many of your own creatures that you can pay for. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of people playing Magic the Gathering, and nobody's using this card in a bunch of decks, I would assume, or else it would be more than $1.18. But I feel like this. My initial thought is this underplayed?
Yeah, I kind of
could this be doing a lot more work?
I only vaguely remembered this until we brought it up here again, and the more I look at it now, I'm liking it. It's, you know,
I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet.
But let's be frank, like with Twiddle, you're probably going to use it on creatures 80% of the time. And now we're getting to the fact that, like, if your opponent wants to, like, boomerang it back at you, they have to pay 3 times the cost that you paid.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah, it's even worse for your opponent. It's even worse for your opponent than Chain Lightning is. Yeah, so it really is a lot worse and a lot less efficient for your opponent to play than it is for you.
Yeah.
And I really like the fact that you could use this really just only on your own creatures,
Yes.
probably to great benefit. These were two early chain cards from back in the day that I think inspired this cycle from Onslaught. The big difference between these earlier chain spells and the Onslaught chain spells is no mana needs to be paid to copy the Onslaught spells. Your opponent can copy the spell, but they have to do something else that doesn't involve paying mana.
Right, like sacrificing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like the idea behind the chain spell too. The idea is, I think, especially for the Onslaught cycle, at least this is what I read. I'm not sure. We can have a discussion about whether or not they really successfully designed them this way, but I think the idea was that, like, you get to play a spell that's above the curve. So typically a spell that does something better than you can usually do for the mana that you pay.
Yeah.
But the downside is you're giving your opponent the ability to copy it if they so choose.
Yeah.
So I like, I like the complexity really of the cards. There's more strategy that goes into it. Okay, I'm going to play this thing, but my opponent could potentially play it back at me. I got to think about when I'm going to use it.
How you use it. Yeah.
So the first chain card from Onslaught we're going to talk about is Chain of Silence. This is an uncommon, printed in Onslaught. Casting cost of one colorless, one white. It is an instant. So you can prevent all damage target creature would deal this turn. That creature's controller may sacrifice a land. If the player does, he or she may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy.
And they won't.
And they won't. It has a 1.607 score on Gatherer. I noted that that's perhaps the lowest score I've ever seen. What does this card do, Alex? Is it just a holy day, which, as we've seen, is a white darkness, which is also a black fog? So when would you use this? You'd cast it really to prevent damage from an attacking creature, right? So like somebody would attack, you declare a blocker, you pay Chain of Silence to prevent all damage from their attacking creature, but then your blocker would still deal the damage, so then you get to kill their attacker.
Like Holy Day or Fog in that case.
Yeah. Well, is that what you do with this?
What about when you're attacking? Let's try it that way. Like,
you attack, they play a Giant Growth. You're attacking me, Alex. I'm piloting the pump.
Something Giant Growth. You don't expect and you don't like. You don't like how the blockers turn out.
And you go, whoa, play Chain of Silence, prevent all damage that your pumped blocker will deal.
Yeah.
So you thought you were going to Giant Growth, crush my attacker? Not today, Junior. You play Chain of Silence.
Yeah. So then that puts the blocker now in like a situation where they can neutralize another attacker, maybe, but they have to sacrifice a land. Maybe. They can neutralize another attacker, but for sacrificing a land. So I think maybe it works better if you're attacking.
But I don't think I love it. Like, you can't really use this to get really one over on your opponent because they'll just sacrifice a land. If you resolving this spell puts them in a particular bad position, they're just going to sack the land, right? They're going to sack the land.
I don't know. Do you put it as white, like in a land destruction deck?
That's my only thought. In a white land
already start for land, and they don't want to. That seems like a long way to go when you could probably just do something more efficient.
Yeah, so I don't love it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the players don't love it either because they gave it a 1.607 on Gatherer and current market price of 9 cents. Cardboard does not get cheaper than this, folks. They had to cut down trees. They had to pulp it.
This is the card to buy if you need to burn to keep yourself warm.
I just don't think it ever gets into my deck. And this will continue a trend that we've seen for many cycles where I feel like white is getting hosed. Mm-hmm. White gets hosed. Next chain card from Onslaught Even when white does get something good, I'm thinking about Judgment. There's a lot of white things that I like in Judgment. They're not even white cards. They're gold cards. They're white and green cards.
Yeah, white. Yeah, white has some good cards that share color with something else.
Yeah. Come on. They gave us early days, Swords of Plowshares, Disenchant, Armageddon, and then they forgot about
Wrath
us.
of God.
Sarah Angel. Yeah. Yeah. Come on. I feel like
Balance. Don't
yes.
Started on balance.
I mean, from the early days, white was no blue, but they gave white some cards to do some work. And I don't know if I'm just not seeing the cards yet from later sets in white to do some work, but
yeah, they're definitely there. Yeah,
they're not as frequent.
The power level picks back up again with white, I think, because it's
Anyways, sidetrack. I'm getting worked up. Chain of Vapor is the next chain card from Onslaught. Chain of Vapor is an uncommon. Casting cost of 1 blue. It is an instant. You can pay 1 blue to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So it's a 1. This is a more efficient boomerang.
Or unsummon, an unsummon that
or unsummon
the creatures. Yeah.
Because I'm saying non-land. Boomerangs everything. Yeah.
Same thing.
But then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. If the player does, he or she may copy the spell and may choose a new target for that copy.
Why is this only 1 blue and the last card we looked at is 1 white, 1 colorless?
Because somebody hates
this card's
white.
Better.
It's way better.
And it has half the casting cost. It's absurd.
Yeah.
You can return. Preventing damage once from 1 creature is not as good as unsummoning a permanent. Just
to either yourself or like also a permanent that belongs to either yourself or your opponent. Yeah.
So off the bat, this is better and it's half the casting cost. I love it.
And the difference in price reflects that too. Current market price $7.13. I've been thinking a lot about bouncing my own permanents recently, as you might be able to tell from the enter the battlefield effect segment and segments we've done on the rock, which aren't strictly focused on enter the battlefield, but there's a lot of that recurring nightmare, bringing things back, putting it back down, generating more tokens, blah, blah, blah. Especially useful, I think, in a deck profit, in a deck that focuses on enter the battlefield creatures. I'm going to bounce my mana war, and then, please sacrifice a land to bounce my deranged hermit. Do it, bucko. Do it.
Big hand size bonuses. Cards that if you have something with like a synergy, a synergy about sand size.
Synergy about sand size, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm also forgetting that it says, then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. So if I bounce my own stuff, then I can choose to sacrifice a land to bounce another thing.
You could, late in the game, you're like, I don't need this extra island anymore.
Also,
I love this card. I think it has so much potential. There's a lot of ways to use it in really deep, clever ways with different combos and different decks. It's super fun to me.
What about Crucible of Worlds, which was a modern card that we don't play with yet because we don't do modern cards yet, but we talked about it last week. Who cares if you're sacrificing a land? You can bounce everything you want back to your hand, and then you just have your lands in your graveyard, right? And then you don't care if you have Crucible of Worlds out, right? I think so too. So, Chain of Vapor I like. The next Onslaught chain card is Chain of Smag. No, Chain of Smog. I spelled it wrong originally. Chain of Smog. This is the black card from... I'm looking at this price chart. This is the black card from Onslaught.
That is wild. Look at that.
For some reason, in early 2021, went from 40 cents to $20. We could have retired, Alex, if we would have established our giant Chain of Smog positions at 19 cents in 2020.
Jesus.
That's crazy. Casting cost, 1 colorless, 1 black. It is a sorcery. Target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand. So it's a better costed
Hymn to
Turak because it's a 1 colorless instead of 2 black, 1 colorless, 1 black. That player may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. So what do you do with this? You play it when you don't have anything in your hand that you care about
usually
losing.
your hand is lower than your opponent's hand.
Yeah. It has a 3.621 rating on Gatherer. You use this with a Madness deck. What if you're playing Madness cards, Black Discard and Madness cards?
Just a multiplayer in general. You might choose a target who isn't you.
Yeah, you want somebody to discard things from your hand. Fine, do it. Yes, multi-channel. I mean, not multi-channel. I'm thinking of pipettes. Multi-channel pipettes. Multiplayer. This is true with all of these chain cards in a multiplayer game. You just watch it get bounced all over the place. But this one especially, I feel like it would get bounced like crazy. I also saw this card and I thought of an opportunity to use a super cheap Legends card that nobody ever uses for anything. So they would never expect. They would never expect that you had this in your hand.
What is it?
I have 4 of these.
Oh, I know what it is. I bought some of these a while back.
Psychic Purges.
The guy with the goofy face and the goofy hand.
I don't know what's going on here.
Conniption.
Squid Man. 1 blue sorcery. Psychic Purge does 1 damage to any target. So it's blue direct damage, which is very rare, but not very great. 1 for 1. If a spell cast by opponent or a permanent under opponent's control causes you to discard this card, opponent loses 5 life. Effects that prevent or redirect damage may not be used to counter this loss of life.
This was like Magic's very first anti-discard card, basically, as far as I know.
Probably.
I don't know anything earlier than this that was clearly designed to like screw over discard decks. Part of the reason I say that is because I think that when Guerrilla Tactics came out, Alliances, I think.
Guerrilla Tactics. Let's just look at the 9th edition one. Yeah.
1 colorless. 2 damage to a target.
2 damage.
And if they make you discard it, it does 4 damage to a target. Yeah. So it's kind of like it's like a more consistent mid-range version of the last card.
Target creature or player. Yeah, it was originally printed in Alliances.
2 or 4 instead of 1 or 5. But I remember when that card came out, I think it was, the first card that had done anything like Psychic Purge.
But it's exciting to see an opportunity to play this stupid card from Legends.
Definitely. If they ever reprint this, they definitely won't use the same art.
Very rare, very exclusive art. You'll never see this again.
Out of print art on Psychic
Did they ever reprint it? No, they haven't.
It looks like Doctor Strange, but like constipated. The way I read this card, when it says target player discards 2 cards from his or her hand, I feel like that gives them the choice.
That's the impression I was getting too, but I don't know for sure. You want to pull it up on?
I'm leaning with it.
Okay.
Hold on, what's it called again? Chain of Smog.
Yeah, it doesn't say randomly discards.
Yeah, because Hymn to Turak says at random.
Yeah.
And the errata on this doesn't say, it doesn't change it, and there's no ruling. So I'm gonna guess it's of their choice.
I'm making that same assumption too. So yeah, not as good as Hymn to Turak. We mentioned Hymn to Turak as a comparator at the beginning.
There's like a new rule in Magic where like if it tells you to discard, it's automatically at random or automatically at the player's choice. I would like to know because I don't know that.
Next chain card, Alex.
Next chain card.
Next chain card is the red chain card. It is Chain of Plasma. It is 1 colorless, 1 red instant. Deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Then that player or that creature's controller may discard a card from his or her hand. If the player does, he or she may copy the spell and may choose a new target for that copy. Yeah. So it is essentially an incinerate that your opponent can copy. So is it a better costed incinerate? If they choose to copy it, then I guess yes, because you've now done 3 damage or 1 colorless and 1 red, and they've lost a card. But at the same time, it's a card that they chose to get rid of.
Yeah, they don't mind losing.
So obviously they didn't mind losing that card in exchange for dealing 3 damage to you or creature you control.
They chose to do that, yeah. Plus, unlike Chain Lightning, like if you're not playing red, you can still do it back to your opponent. Like they don't need red mana. Anyone can discard a card.
Yes.
So they, any player of any color is going to have that option. So I don't really love that. I don't love that it's more than lightning bolt casting cost. If this card was 1 red casting cost, I'd probably, play it.
Yeah.
Like a chain lightning in different circumstances. But that casting cost, I feel like I'd just rather play chain lightning.
I think I'd rather play Incinerate too. For just funsies, all of these cards, if we're just talking about funsies here, if we're just talking about a CD EDH game, a casual EDH game, then yeah, these are all good for funsies.
Yeah, because of the
watch it bounce all
aspect.
around.
Yeah.
That's a given.
Yeah.
But if we're not,
that, I put this really close to the white one in the set.
Yeah.
A little better than the white one, or
so far, yes, it goes blue, black, red, white in my mind.
Yeah.
I put it's below lightning bolt, of course. I put it below chain lightning. I put it below incinerate. If we're talking about competitive deck, what kind of competitive deck might you want it in? I don't know. Maybe a black red discard deck, because then you have one card that does both of the things that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I think what I wrote down for this card is like you need your opponent to make a bad decision for this to be like really beneficial for you to play. So
I don't like it.
Yeah, same here.
All right. But we haven't gotten to the green one yet in our rankings.
Current market price of 28 cents. The green one is scary.
We might be changing up our order.
We talked about this one very briefly.
We did. At
a long
least
time
on the
ago.
phone. I'm not sure if we talked about it on the podcast, but I think we did.
And I was like, I don't even remember what I said about this card the first time around, but looking at it, revisiting it, I'm like afraid of it.
I know you liked it when I brought it up. I know you were like, "This is good," and I thought
I felt like that too, but maybe I was feeling particularly chaotic that day because I feel like this card is just pure chaos. It is Chain of Acid.
Oh, when you say afraid of it, you just mean in general, not like I thought you meant like afraid of people using it against you. Like I respect that card because it's good.
I'm afraid of it being played. Like, what's going to happen after somebody casts this spell?
Yeah. That's why, like, this is the wild card.
It's total chaos. It is Chain of Acid. It is an uncommon from Onslaught. Casting cost 3 colorless, 1 green. So we're talking about a higher casting cost than the others. Mm-hmm. It's a sorcery. Destroy target non-creature permanent. Then that permanent's controller may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. So this one doesn't even involve them like sacrificing a land, discarding anything. It's just like, okay, this is what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And then the whole board gets wiped except for creatures.
Gives you a second chance to do it again.
So it does.
Like they're always one behind you.
Yeah.
In doing it.
This could turn into a mono green Armageddon where you just destroy a land and then they're like, okay, I'm destroying your land. And then you just keep going. You got to be ahead of them, though, to do it. You got to be ahead of them to play this card.
It's like bait, you like use it, and then at first they're like, "Oh, well, I'm going to use it back," and then they start to realize, like, "Oh, shit."
You got to play this against somebody who's psychologically unstable. So somebody who
play it against a red player. Against someone playing red who's like crazy aggro already.
Yeah. Isn't there like a terminology like cut off your nose to spite yourself or something? I might be totally making
cut off your nose to spite your face. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to play this against somebody who will cut off their nose to spite their face. But otherwise,
so like if they, so you cast it and they don't use it back on you. That's good. Like maybe you paid a little bit too much to destroy their permanent. You paid 4.
But you can't get rid of anything other than a creature.
Anything. Okay, so if they don't use it against you, it's good. If they do use it back against you, then you get to use it back against them, so that's good. You know what I mean? Like they're always like a step behind you.
They're always one behind you, yeah. The thing about this card is you got to use it when you're already ahead.
Yeah.
Which if you're playing green, by turn 4, you might already be ahead because you're playing the ramp.
At least in the number of permanents.
Yes. If you're not ahead, if your opponent gets ahead of you, then you're kind of stuck with a dead card in your hand. But it's scary. It's scary in a multiplayer because I could just see like, people just deciding to be chaotic evil. 3.779 on Gatherer, current market price of 28 cents. It had a crazy spike too at the same time the Chain of Smog did, but it didn't make it up to $26. It just went from 14 cents to $4, and it's come back down to pretty much where it was. You can get it for under, you can get it for about a quarter.
I got a couple of them at least.
It's a fun card. What is it?
I like it. I think it's super fun.
I think I like it.
Versatile. Sorry.
I think it's the second best. It's blue, green, black.
Yeah, I think so too.
Alex, we need to start doing that tier list thing that YouTubers do where they put up like the tier list and there's like S tier, A
Like with a
tier.
graphic.
Yeah, then they put the things over there. And that if we were good YouTubers, we'd be making tier lists.
Things over there.
I do really like the versatility and green removal that you get with this. And when I started talking just now about how you're playing green, you're playing ramp, you should be able to get ahead of your opponent early on. Play this when you're ahead. I think maybe I like it more than I did yesterday when I was reading about it.
And that reminds me, since it's non-creature permanent, like say I'm playing green, well, what are you doing early to get your ramp? You're putting down elves and birds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they try to use it against you and they have to destroy a non-creature permanent. So your mana sources are creatures. A lot of them. So maybe they destroy your forest or whatever, but it doesn't matter to you because you have creatures that can generate mana.
That's true. That's true.
That's true.
Well, that was a good conversation, Alex. That is the end of the Onslaught chain cycle, which was inspired, I believe, by the earliest chain cards, Chain Lightning and Chain Stasis.